Hello, my name is Michael Wild. I'm a modelling and texturing VFX artist. If you're here, you probably know that because, this is my YouTube channel where I make videos. This is the 8th part in the Learning Mari for Beginners series, which I've been making. And in this final video, we're going to go from start to finish texturing an asset. It's quite a simple asset. It's nothing too major, but I just want to show the entire process that you will take an asset through in Mari. It might be quite a long video. I'm going to try and not edit anything out. I might edit if I can get up and get a cup of tea, another cup of tea. As you might be able to hear, I'm a little sick. It's not COVID, thankfully. It might jump around because I'm getting up and down, but I'm sitting down to do this mostly all in one go. So I'm going to keep it all in just to show you the process. If you haven't seen the rest of this series, I'm going to assume that base knowledge, so go back and watch that. This is part 8. All the main Mari kind of fundamentals have been covered already in all these videos, I think really well as well. There's not a huge amount of Mari content on the internet, and I'd like to think that mine is some of the better out there. Cool, so this is the asset we're going to be looking at. This is a statue I sculpted ages ago on ZBrush, and as you can see, it was the topology is not very good. The UVs are not very good. In fact, they're bad. But it doesn't matter. It's almost like you will sometimes get bad UVs in a production environment, which is the angle I'm going at with this, but it's just because I'm too lazy to actually make something proper. And all the other assets that I've used in the other videos, I'm trying to mix it up a bit with the assets so they're not super boring, because I could just use the camera again, but nah, it's a bit boring. And I modelled this little crown to go on top of it, which is in the second UDIM. So yeah, that's the asset we're looking at today. So I have already sculpted this inside of ZBrush a while ago. As you can see, I've got a little bit of like decaying. Is this the highest poly? No, it's not. Let me take that up. I've got a little bit of damage and stuff here, which I am going to take into Mari. And this crown I have just sculpted ever so slightly onto it. So if you want to follow along with this, all of the model, including the ZBrush file and the stuff I export that I'll be using later on, because I will be using some displacement and stuff like that. Let me go back to Maya. All of that is available on Gumroad. It will be to buy. I'm not doing this one for free, I'm afraid, because this course has taken a really long time to create. So it's going to be quite cheap. It's going to be like the price of a coffee, maybe slightly more. But you get all the files along with that. So if you have enjoyed this course, then and you want to support it, then buy this, follow along. Even if you don't want to follow along, it helps me out. Anyway, that's my spiel on that, and maybe I'll mention it again at the end. But so yeah, if you want to follow along what I'm doing, you can go to my Gumroad. Obviously links will be in the description and whatnot. If I'm looking over there, it's because I've got my recording, just making sure that it's all going on the right, and here is my main screen. Cool. So it might be a little bit it's not gonna be super concise, this video. It's gonna be me doing it from start to finish. I haven't previously textured this, so I don't know how it's going to look. But I know it's going to be, I'm just going to make sure that I've got textures and everything. It's going to, I don't know, we'll go with the flow. Anyway, I'm also a little sick, so I'm like kind of out of it. And so first things first, I'm going to make a Mari project. I'm just going to call this statue for YouTube. It's fine with me. And I just need to import the OBJ. Let me pause this. I'm going to actually make sure I've got the model properly exported, and then I'm going to unpause. Okay, cool. Done that now. I'm just going to set this up as default for now. I can fix it as I go along. This doesn't really matter. Lighting wise, I'll sort that all out later. Just as long as it's named right and I've got the right geo. So full disclaimer, I have actually not used Mari properly in over a year. I've been working for a Japanese company remotely, which is Substance only, which I thought was going to be horrendous. It was not. We weren't doing anything super like realistic, like VFX wise. So I'm potentially going to have forgotten some of this. So it might be a learning journey for both of us. I just wanted to say that up front. Also, there was something else I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, sorry. So my head is going to be covering, I think it's around up here. I'm hoping, that's why I'm keeping an eye on the side to make sure I don't have anything important blocked. I didn't know where else to put me, but I wanted also a friendly face as we go along, rather than you just staring at a screen for the entirety of this video. So in the edit, if I do happen to block anything, then I will re-record it without my face. We'll go from there. We've got a project. I personally prefer being in the perspective view, so I'm just going to get that. And then now that we've got that, we'll set up very simply So you can see it's kind of based on like an ancient Greek statue. So what I was thinking with this is just something very simple, sort of marbly. Obviously we've got a bit of like a few chips and here and there. So I'm going to import the displacement. We'll get that in, probably get some bake data from Substance as well because Murray's baking sucks. Yeah, so it might be, I don't know, I'm going to go for kind of just like a marbly base. I don't think anything quite as decaying as this. It's like a Medusa they found in a car park somewhere in Italy, I think. And then we'll add a little bit of grime on top. It's probably going to be more kind of akin to this. And then the crown, I'm just thinking sort of a tarnished gold. Very, very simple. I literally just want to get something on everything, get a nice little bit of texture detail there so it doesn't look super crappy, and just get it exported and see how that runs us. Maybe we'll do a second pass on the textures when I've got everything working. But yeah, this is more just to show the entire pipe of the asset, but also show you a little bit how I would do this at work, which would be collecting reference and stuff like that. Cool. So first things first, let's check our channels out. I'm just going to move that PureRef off here. So we've got the default ones that Murray made for us. I'm just going to remove all this. I don't need this. So just making sure that my channels are there. So I do want a base color. That's fine. I don't want a specular. I never use specular. We do want spec roughness. I'm just going to rename this to what I would call this myself, which is spec R. I'm just going to call this cull. Bump is fine, but I'm actually going to call it disp. I'm going to make a channel for normals. So to make a channel, I'm pressing tab and just go to channel. I'm going to call this norm for normal. Remove that. 4K is fine. We're going to do it 16-bit, and it's going to be scalar raw data. Wait, do we already have a normal channel? No, sorry, that's what it's saying. So it's going to be scalar data for now, and we're going to go from there. Okay, cool. So I'm not doing ASUS CG or anything like that. No, it's just going to be sRGB color space. sRGB, nothing too fancy. So now you can see, because I've removed the stuff that's going in, it's completely overexposed this. So let's just get a base color on there so it's not quite as bright. I'm just going to do a color constant, I believe it's called. Again, I have not used Mari in over a year, so I've forgotten a lot of the node names. But I'm just pressing tab on my keyboard to do that. And I'm just going to get something a little bit, I mean, if we look at this, obviously this is quite yellow lighting here. But I'm going to go for something beige with a little bit of warmth to it, just to begin with. Yeah, cool. Let's just, too saturated for me. So let's bring the value down a bit and the saturation. Maybe the value back up. Okay, cool. So that will do for now. And we're viewing this through the viewer, so that's all good. And then spec-wise, I'm just going to make sure that I'm viewing this. Yep, full shader. That's all coming back to me now. I'm going to use a value just for the spec roughness to begin with. Oh, no, actually, no, let's use a color. Okay, let's use color. If we just set this to linear, I believe they've changed the color picker since. So I'm just going to pick a value. So it's stone, so it's going to be quite matte. So I'm just going to try like 80% and we'll see how that looks. Hasn't changed that much. I'm already pressing, I'm just going to remove these and see what that does. Nothing, okay. And then I'm just going to go to my lights. And I am going to get an environment light in here. God, I've forgotten how bad Murray's viewport is. Oh, it's been a while. I'm so sorry if this video just turns out to be me ripping on Murray. This is genuinely the first time I've used it in a year. But I wanted to make this video so that I can show the entire process of how you would approach this. It's funny, when I first started using Substance, I was like, I'm just going to show, I'm not going to hide this, show this. I'm going to hide that behind. Okay, cool. I never used to use the lit view anyway, but it just feels incredibly overblown. If I do that, and I'm just going to rotate it a little bit. Cool, okay, that's slightly better, just so that I'm seeing my color a little bit more accurately. Okay, cool. It's not perfect, but it'll do. So now, presumably, if I change... Actually, let's just try picking value, because then I get a slider. Oh, no, it's not. Is it value? Is it? Constant. It's constant. So let's do that. And then all this should, in theory. Okay, cool. So now I'm getting a spec change on that. So for now, just so I can see the curvature a little bit more, I'm going to set it at 0.4, but I will be changing that later on. So obviously, that's not how marble looks. Okay, so Next thing I want to do is, because I've got my displacement and normal map baked out of ZBrush, I am going to want to import those. I won't necessarily use them. I might end up using them. I think in this example I won't end up using them, but it's just useful to kind of get that data inside of Mari, because obviously it doesn't have innate baking, so you kind of can't get that high poly in there without sort of getting it into the shader yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put down a paint node that I'm going to import into. So I'm using non-commercial because the licenses... Oh my god, I'm so sorry. This video is just turning into me ripping Mari for however long it's going to last for. But the licenses cost too much money. It's the it's the reality of the situation for a freelancer. It's just too much money. So I haven't renewed my license. So I'm going to be using a 16-bit one here. And everything else is fine. We're just going to bring that in. Cool. I would use 32-bit because ZBrush exports 32-bit data. But you work with what you're given, and worst was worst, if I don't make any alterations inside of Mari, if I need the 32-bit, then I can just use that ZBrush export straight away. So yeah, I'm going to make one of these for the normal and one of these for the displacement. So this one I'm just going to call ZBrush norm. These are just naming conventions I like. It really depends on the studio. You might not call it norm, you might call it normal, you might call it disp, you might call it displacement, you might call it zdisp, you might call it height. Don't get me started about calling it height though, because height... Anyway, so I'm going to just import these two here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring... I'm just going to make sure this is also... So I'm double clicking this to make sure everything here is correct. I'm going to bring these off because I'm using the non-commercial. I don't have the fabulous extension pack, which is kind of a lifesaver when it comes to Mari. But yeah, it doesn't work with the NC. So here, I'm just going to call this my imports. It's just a nice way to sort of keep everything... decluttered. So this would be if I brought in any substance bakes, if I brought in, I don't know, anything else that I might need, then I just import these here. So I'm going to import my ZBrush normal. So to import it, I'm just going to right click this node and go file import, and let's find it. I've got this folder here, so I'm just going to copy the path to. If sometimes they don't show here, try removing this template. If you know there's something in your folder, just remove that, and then that should show everything. But this template, in theory, is going to show it for me. So I'm going to import my normal onto this. Going to check this color space, make sure that everything seems right. This should be fine. I'm not going to resize anything. No, sorry, I'm going to resize the patches, not the images. And that should be good. And then just to check that that's working, I'm going to press 1 on that and see how that looks. Cool. So we've got my normal map from that. So that's giving me the sort of like decay there. So now, in theory, if I plug this into the shader, this is just the principal BRDF, which is kind of their base shader. We should... Great, cool. So already this looks so much better inside of here. And it's the same sort of thing inside Substance. Before you bake, your model looks a bit bland, and then when you get that on, it can look a bit nicer. Yeah, and then I'm going to do the same thing with displacement. I'm actually not going to be... let me just import that. I'm not going to be putting that into the displacement. I'm just going to be putting that into the bump so that it's not quite as heavy on my shader. So if I just go bump, it doesn't really do much, presumably. Let me check that imported okay. Yeah, it looks alright. But yeah, it's so minor. The reason that I wanted to import these is maybe not the normal, but especially for the displacement, this is data that I can potentially use. So if I go here and just add a levels node, then what I can do is I can, for example, if I want to get everything that's sort of pushed in, or I want to get some of these crevices, it's not quite the same as a curvature map. And if I need those, then I can import that. But if I just view this, then I can really just like pick out, oh, okay, so, let me see. So here I'm picking out some of the divots, and that could just be used for a mask for something. Say for example, like all the grime and dust that's caught between those areas. If I have a look at my PureRef, obviously this is shadow, but there's definitely like this. I could use this, multiply it with a procedural, and voila, I've got a mask beginning. Cool. So that's good. I'm not using that for now. So what else do I need to set up? I'm actually going to find a proper color for this. I'm not going to use this constant anymore. Let's have a look at this principal BRDF and get a roughness that kind of works. Just make sure I'm not actually using color. So let's just use the value. It's super rough. Let's go with like that for now. So well, that's 81%. And this is way too yellow. This is kind of like cheese. I'm just going to switch that back to sRGB. It's just too much saturation. Cool. If I had a bit more warmth to that, make it slightly more orange. Okay, perfect. So first things first, because this is more of a hard surface asset, obviously we've got this crown, which is going to be sort of a different object. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of start blocking stuff in. So this gold material I'm going to set up. So this is our stone section. So the way I like to work personally is I will make a backdrop section for the stone, and then I'll make a backdrop section for the goldy crown. I could do this separately and sort of merge them together. With this, is it worth doing it? Yeah, let's do it. We'll do it on top and then we'll just merge them together. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do the crown on top, merging here. So let's just make a color for that. If I'm working with hard surface, I would usually set up the color first. Mari does have a material system. I don't really like it. So what I will do is I will set up the color, and then I'll use that information, the mask that I've created, to kind of inform the other things like the spec roughness and stuff like that. It's not necessarily the best way to work. I think if the materials were slightly better, or they're not bad, sorry, that's me being a bit harsh, or it's me not using the right language. But I think the material system is fine, but for me, it just doesn't click in my brain. It's not quite visual enough, and I'm a very visual person. So that's the reason that I don't use that myself. So this is just me gold crown. This is going to be marble. And also kind of what I'm doing here is almost building up a material, but just not inside of the node. It's because it's so embedded within each other. If you don't know about the material system, you can go and have a look at it up. I didn't add it into this beginner's course because, yeah, not the biggest fan. So this gold crown color is just going to be, we're just going to pick something. We're going to add a bit of warmth to it. I do quite like an orangey gold, and then I can always change it. This says it's gold. It almost feels like a brass or a bronze, but we're going to go with that as one of the main pieces of ref. I did have a really nice ref that I was using to model this crown to, and now I can't find it. So the moral of that story is save your ref when you get it. Don't think you won't close the Google Chrome tab, because you will close the Google Chrome tab. Okay, cool. So that's added this color everywhere, but obviously I don't want it everywhere. So I'm just going to make a paint node, and I'm going to use this for the mask. So this is going to be scalar data. It doesn't, I'll do it as 16-bit, but it doesn't necessarily need to be for what this is, but we'll do it as that. Oh, it's really thinking, isn't it? Okay, cool. So I'm going to switch over to my ortho/UV view now. Going to think about it. I forgot how slow this was. Right, cool. So this here is my crown. This here is the statue. I'm also going to switch the ortho to perspective. Which one is it? There we go. Cool. Okay. Just because it's a face. Oh, my face is in the way of this face. Okay. We're just going to roll with that because I'm not really using this so far, but that's good to know going forward. So I'm going to plop this mask in, and we're just going to view and see how this looks. Cool. So presumably it's all black to begin with. Oh no, it's because that's actually no. I'm going to change this. I'm going to redo it. I'm going to change the color. As you can see, I've got an alpha in here. So by default, it's a gray alpha. So I'm just going to set this to black because I think that's a really useful, just standard. So next time I make a paint node, it's going to remember this and it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to do that, and now this should be black. If I view it. Great. And so there's a couple of ways, obviously, to fill this in. Because it's just a different object than what I'm going to use is I'm going to select that object using Mari's awesome selection tools, and then I'm just going to fill that rather than like hand painting it with a paintbrush. It's the quickest way to do it. So I'm going to change to the smart selection mode here. I'm going to go to connected mesh, and if I actually I don't know if I, yeah, cool. So if I do it there, it's going to click that. If I click this, then it would just click the face. I could also do connected UVs, which is a really useful one, but that oh, we're not in smart selection mode. Why is that not working? It's because we're on patch mode. Sorry, I need to change it to face mode first. Cool. Now I was wondering, it happened too quickly because usually it has to calculate it. Okay, cool. So you can see I'm in connected UVs, so I selected this entire outer face. If I did connected mesh, should select all that. Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with that selected, which is the crown, I'm going to go right click, fill, and set that to white. And that's a really easy way to set up a mask based on objects. This is one thing I wish Substance had, because their geo selection tool is not, it's all right, but it's pretty bad. Cool. Okay, so now if I view that, oh my god, you guys were texturing, we're actually doing it. So a quick note, if you're viewing nodes, it doesn't show you, it shows you at flat, which can be a little bit annoying because it can be really hard to, especially on an object like this, when you're first setting up colors, it's quite hard to tell what's where. One little trick I like to do is if I just add a new merge node with M and then make an ambient occlusion node. Obviously, if I viewed this shader at the end, then I would see the shape again. But so I'm just going to view that. I'm going to multiply the AO over. And then if I view this now, I have to bake the ambient occlusion first. It's going to think about it. Great. I mean, it's not a good AO, but it's enough just to show me form, which is really, really useful. So sometimes I'll just put that just before what I'm painting, just so I can see a little bit easier where I'm painting. And you'll probably see me do that later on. Okay, great. So one thing I always want to do is, because this crown is metallic, that's going to be a really important channel that I haven't actually set up yet. So if I go back here, so we've got our metallic here. So I'm just going to make a new channel, which I didn't make earlier because I forgot to. I'm just going to call it metal. And we're going to set it as default black. Scalar data, great. And I'm just going to put color. I'm going to set it to black. So by default, this is going to be black. And then I'm going to, so this is, I should be naming my nodes as I go along, but black, yeah, that'll do. And I'm just going to make one that's white by copying and pasting that. You'll see what I'm doing in a second. So this is why I absolutely love the node graph, and you're going to see why. So I'm going to do this into the over slot. So, and I'm just going to use the same mask that I used earlier. So this is just going to be called the crown mask. Now, if I use this same mask, it will make the crown metallic and the head thing. Words are hard today. The head is non-metallic, so if I look at that map, then obviously if I were to change that mask, not only does it change where the gold goes in, but it also changes where the metallic comes in. So this is how I work. Again, it's a little bit more cumbersome than if I were just working with materials because all that stuff will be defined in one node. I just don't know the materials, so it is what it is. So then I'm also going to go in and just set up a really quick color as well. So this is base spec R, copy and paste that, and exactly the same way I'm going to add a mask for the crown. I'm just going to set it up so that this crown is a bit shinier because at the moment it looks really matte and a bit crap. Cool, so this is crown spec. I might not end up using this in the end. Sometimes what I do is I make the spec by just using the color and like desaturating it. But hey, there we go. Cool. So that looks much more like a crown now. I was like, why is it so diffuse? But it's just because the spec is so low. Oh, so what I've done there is I've made the spec roughness have color in it, which I don't want. Obviously, if I had done that, so not obviously, but so what, sometimes if I accidentally do that, you can just add an HSV right at the end for the channels that aren't supposed to be saturated, and you can just get rid of that at the end to make sure your maps come out fine. But yeah, okay, cool. So very quickly, we've got some very, very basic textures on here. It's not looking awful actually. That's cool. And you can see, obviously I've got my normals from ZBrush, which really helps this just look a little bit nicer. One thing I will say, Mari's viewport never looks that nice, so your textures kind of can look a little bit crappy. The good thing is when you render them, they will usually look nicer, whereas I find actually, again, I'm sorry this video is becoming a Mari versus Substance, but it's what some of you might be coming from as well if you're watching this series, probably what a lot of you are coming from. Substance always looks really nice in Substance, and then you can render it and it can look kind of shitty. So yeah, always assume your textures will look a little bit nicer when you render. That's kind of just my go-to thought process when I'm inside of Mari. Cool, so next up, what I want to do is this grey is looking fine, but I want to get some actual texture on there. So what's our runtime at the moment? We're 24 minutes in. Okay, cool. we will do this hopefully in just under an hour. I'm hoping maybe a little bit longer. So I want to just get a base texture in. So we're going to go to our image manager. Again, we're not doing anything particularly fancy. I just want to show you the entire process. So if I go to my texture library, if you don't have a texture library set up, get a texture library set up. So anytime that I am using an image, whether that's from textures.com, Megascans, blah, blah, wherever I get them, free, paid, Google, whatever they are, I will save them here so that I have them for the future. So I've got a marble thing here. This one is really nice. I'm probably going to end up using that. This is one I made inside of Substance Designer a while back. This is another one that I've used so much for so many different things. I use it all the time for birds. I've textured way too many birds in my career. This is really good for, it's a really nice mask for getting keratin on the beak. I just extract those veins. That's a really nice one. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these three. Actually, that's a really nice mask that I've presumably created from this. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just going to add all these. Might be useful. So I'm just going to drag and drop them into my image manager. In theory, that's just going to make them automatically just going to set up the color space for me. So actually this one I think should be raw, but these other ones, sRGB, sRGB, sRGB. Cool, that's all good. Okay, so first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to do a tile text. No, I'm not going to do a tile texture because as you can see, my UVs were crap. No, let me show you why I'm not going to do a tile texture. So I'm just going to merge this on top to begin with. Rather than just getting rid of this color for now, because that color might be useful later on. So if I were to just add a tile texture, you can't see this because my head's in the way. My head versus this guy's head. Okay, and I'm just going to drag and drop this tiling texture. But you can see because my UVs are crap, it looks ugly. Looks really, really ugly. Also, the scale isn't great. So let me just... it's been so long, I've literally forgotten how to do this. Okay, it's a bit better. But as you can see, yeah, that seam is just no good. That will absolutely not work. I'm actually going to go off of the UV view because we shouldn't need it for a little bit. Cool, and I'm going to bring this down. Great, so I'm going to use a triplanar for this, which is very similar. If you don't know it, it's a fantastic node. It basically projects on your x-axis, on your y-axis, on your z-axis. Those are not the right axes, but it projects from all three axes and kind of blends them together. So it's really useful because it avoids UV seams. So I'm actually going to use this texture, which I'm almost certain is not tiling, but we're going to see what happens. Sometimes you can get away with non-tiling textures and it can look great. So the only thing about this is you have to add it in 3 places. The extension pack has a really great node called the axis projection, which you only have to put 1 texture in, which does a very similar thing, and I love that. But for this, I just add it 3 times. So yeah, you can see here I've got this seam. So I don't think that's going to work because it's just a bit too obvious. So I'm going to try this texture instead, just for a nice base. Yeah, honestly, that looks quite nice. So, but the veins are too small. If we have a look at our ref, the veins should be much smaller. Do I not have any veined marble statues? Maybe the veins are actually too much in that case because none of my ref is showing it. Cool, but anyway, let's set this up to, let's set this to 50. So the world scale is a really useful way. You can change the front, top and back axis separately, but the world scale is a really nice way to do that quite quickly. So I'm just going to do that. And already that's given me quite a nice texture. If I were to just view this, I'm going to get rid of the lighting because I don't really need it. I would get comfortable inside of Mari of working without seeing lighting. You can jump backwards and forwards, but it's not really the sort of program in the same way that Substance is, where you're viewing your material and you're look demoing at the same time because, as I said, the viewport just never looks as nice as your render will. So I maybe there's other texture artists that will completely disagree with me here, and if they do, fair play to them. But I just find you can't necessarily accurately look dev in Mari the same way that you can in Substance, so you're often taking it with a pinch of salt, or you're often jumping backwards and forwards after you've exported just to check your renders. You might jump back and be like, my spec doesn't look quite right, yada yada. Or maybe that's just me doing it incorrectly, but I don't think it is. So anyway, this looks quite nice as a base. It's very simple, but I'm just having a look around to make sure that the triplanar isn't mucking up anywhere, because sometimes it goes a little bit funky, but actually it's worked really quite nicely. I do think the veins are a little bit too much because I'm not really seeing that in my reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to merge this on top with the merge node that goes on top of the base color. I'm just going to bring that back ever so slightly. I'm going to go for something like that. So they're still in there. And then I'm just going to have a look what other reference I've got. Just because I'm seeing some like small kind of white crispy dots, I'm going to use a substance. So substances procedurals are fantastic. So I've actually baked them out myself just to use in other programs. This one, I absolutely love that. Okay, cool. So I want those black dots. So I'm going to import that. I think that should be okay because it was in beta as JPEG. Anyway, we're going to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to just set up we're going to do another merge node just to get some of these white dots, like this crispiness. And I'm going to do the color. It has got a little bit of warmth to it, but not too much. I'm going to use this mask here. So if I drag and drop that from the image manager, it sets it as tiled, but I actually don't want it as tiled because of my UV, so I want that as triplanar. So I can right click this and go add to node graph as triplanar, and that will bring that in there. So now if we view that, you can see we've got this texture. Obviously it's tiled crazy amounts, so I'm going to set that to 25 again. I'm actually going to set it a little bit lower, so 20, that looks good. And I'm just going to actually, you know what, for now it's fine. So if we view this color, we're going to merge this over. And if I add this mask here, so it's giving me something, but this isn't what I want. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because I actually want these black dots. Oh, okay, wait, sorry. So maybe I do want that. Cool. Because, it's being used as a mask, so I need to set it to raw data to get it looking the way... Color space in Mari, I mean, you've hopefully watched my color space video. It's a nightmare. I often find I will be ticking and unticking boxes to make sure if it looks right in your viewport, that's usually when it's working right. Yeah, I'm kind of, I just roll with the punches a little bit with it and just assume I'm probably going to get it wrong. As long as everything exports fine and renders correctly and looks the way I want it to, I ain't mad. Anyway, cool. Okay. So, sorry, the thing I was trying to say there was I actually wanted these black dots to be the white dots. So, to be the white kind of, you can see how I've got these like little black bits that I think work nicely for this. So I'm going to invert this first of all by just using an invert node on this mask. Great. And then I'm going to use the levels just to kind of bring those out a little bit more and give it a bit more contrast. So levels is probably one of my most used nodes inside of Mari. And I'm going to just play with that a little bit just to really bring out the white bits. I don't want it too crispy. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks quite nice. It's probably it's probably a bit easier if I view the levels node as I play with it. Okay, bringing it back does kind of fade that effect out a little bit. So it's slightly less harsh, but I'm going to... Yeah, okay, cool. I actually quite like that. Just view that. Is that the triplanar? It's going a little bit weird there. That might be the triplanar projection. So let me just see if I can fix that. If I can't, then... Oh yeah, cool. So what's happening is because it's blending two axes together, you can see we've got a little bit of one and a little bit of both, the other one, which is giving it this kind of soft, weird effect. So what I can do is I can just change the fall off so that it doesn't blend quite as softly. And in theory, yeah, cool. So now I'm kind of getting rid of that. I will get a bit more of a harsh line here, which might look weird, but let's have a look. No, it looks all right. I mean, I can see a line there, but it's nothing too major. Okay, cool. So that's a detail that I quite like from the ref. Let's just have a look for something else. Again, I don't want to go too hard on this because I do want to try and keep this somewhat short. Have a look. Okay, so I'm just seeing some nice sort of like tiny sort of dappling. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's color in the marble, or I don't know if it's like been discoloration as it's been knocked about a bit. But let's see if we can just get a little bit of darker sort of saturation in there. So again, I'm going to be a little bit lazy. I'm just going to use a substance procedural because when in Rome. If it doesn't work, then I will end up hand projecting some stuff later, but for now, that kind of works. Let's see that. What's that one? Grunge charcoal. Let's just get that in. Get that as raw. So that's going to be as triplanar. We're going to merge this on top. So this is a mask. So this is light dots. Great. Just save this to make sure it doesn't crash. Does Mari crash? I feel like Mari's not a crasher, but I can't really remember. Again, it's been a while. So this is just going to be a bit darker. I'm just going to plug this in and see how this looks. By default, it's going to look like crap. Just set this to 25. And again, I want to invert this because I just want to get some of these dots and probably some of these, maybe not the brush strokes, but we can get rid of those if we don't like them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert. Great. Okay, I'm actually quite liking that. That's quite a cool detail. Levels that. Again, just to sort of bring some of this out so it's not everywhere. Okay, let's try like that. Let's just look at our ref again. So it really is quite subtle. I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit. And so I don't really like these bits here because they don't really make sense. Like it's, the scratches I don't mind so much, but this almost feels like a brush stroke. So the way to get rid of that is I'm just gonna mask that out of this mask. So I think I've got a video about this, or if not, it's definitely in my Squirtle series. So I'm just gonna set a paint node that is by default black. We're gonna set the alpha, oh no, actually, sorry. We're gonna set this to white. And so if I put this in here and set this to multiply, if you think about the maths that's going on, if we view this, I'm multiplying white over everything that was already there, over that mask that we were just looking at, which, so multiply, white is 1, so you're timesing everything by 1, so it just stays the same. If I were to paint black, which is 0, it removes the details that were there just in this paint node. So that's why I'm saying it to white to begin with, and then if I just go in, make sure that I've got this selected for, I'm assuming I have paint on selected, set up. Let me just check my paint settings because I haven't actually looked at this yet. God, it's been so long. Paint on selected only. Okay, cool. So that, this mesh is selected, great. And I'm just gonna paint. I'm not even using my Wacom. Let's use the Wacom a little bit. If we just view the results of this, you'll see what this does. Just a really easy way to remove some of the strokes. Obviously, I could go to my library and sorry, my shelf. Where have they moved this all to? The organic ones are quite nice. This is probably my favorite go-to one. I'm just gonna set the flow really low. I'm just gonna so this is what I kind of miss in Substance. There are definitely ways to do it with anchor points, and the I'm just gonna get rid of any bits that just feel a bit egregious. So I am actually going to blur this next because in the ref it's much softer. No, I'm not selecting. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we've definitely got some softness to this kind of dappling that's in here. So I could go in and hand paint that if I wanted to quite easily, but I'm just going to begin with, try... I'm just going to get rid of... It's a bit clumped up there. It's not quite that harsh in the ref. Okay, cool. So I could use the new filter bake point things, whatever. But so I'm just going to use, for now, I'm going to use my old tried and true method, which is, so I will bake everything up into that point until a new paint node. And that's going to think about that for a second. Cool. So now it's exactly the same thing, but it's baked down. And then I'm just going to filter this. So it's kind of the same thing as a filter point, only the filter point is easier to sort of update. So I would recommend, if you're going to be doing this a lot, looking into them. And I'm just going to preview this so we can see how this is actually looking. I don't need quite that much. Go for something like that. What happens if I change the amount? Actually, it still gives me some of the harshness. Oh no, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur this rather dramatically like that. So if we view this, has that worked? Oh, it didn't do it. Did I have the wrong selection? Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Let me just double check. Selected patches of current paint target. So we just want current paint target. That's potentially why. Let's try that this time. Cool, much better. But if we look at this now, I have lost all of the detail. So one thing that I like to do is just merge those two together. And if I put the base of the slightly more blurred one with the over of the slightly other one, let's see how that looks. And actually, let's view the output. It's a bit easier to visualize then. Hopefully. Has that done it? No, because they just meant, wait, sorry. Let me have a think. To be honest, I can just do 50-50, and then that should give me a little bit of softness, but it will bring back some of that sharpness. I'll do that. So this is just going to be baked blur. So now if I want to update, if I update this, then I really need to go back and update that, but it's kind of okay. It's all right. And some of that softness as well will come with the subsurface scattering that is just like inherently inside of Marble. Yeah, I mean, it's not a one-for-one. If I was actually doing this for a production environment, I spend a lot longer on this. The final thing I will do, I guess, is some of these white cracks, and I'm going to actually do this, hand paint this, because I haven't really done any projections or anything yet. I've only just been working procedurally. Personally, I'm a sucker for procedural because it just means you can update stuff quicker if you need to update stuff. But what I'm actually going to do is, oh, just hit my node graph like an idiot. What time are we on? Oh, we're on 43 minutes. This is running up longer than I thought it was going to be. Okay, cool. So I'm also, because obviously this is all my Marble here, I'm just going to encase all of this inside of this so that it's all a little bit less cluttered. And I'm going to move it along, and then this crown we can keep there for later. Okay, perfect. Great. So what did I say I was just going to do? I was going to add some of these slight worn away cracks that we're seeing, these sort of like scratch lines. Very subtle, but let's get some of those in. Okay, so I'm going to use this Marble Cracks texture that I showed you earlier. This is one that I made earlier, I think. When I say earlier, not earlier today, I mean years ago. So this is going to be, if we have a look at it, it's just sort of white. So we're going to do a color. I'm going to set that to white for now. I'm going to merge it over, but instead, oh no, actually, you know what? I'm going to do something a bit funkier because it's sort of just like a brighter version of what's underneath. I don't want to just add white on top because it doesn't have that much texture in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brighten and desaturate what is already there. And we're going to see how that looks. So I do need a merge node for that, but I'm going to do an HSV, hue saturation value node. So if I view this red, by the way, is just the masking. I don't know why it showed all of a sudden. Wasn't shown before. Anyway, it's just edge masking that's I've got set up by default. Cool. So if I hue saturate value this, I'm going to go to, if I view this now, and I just want to bring, so this will be where the scratches are, and I just want to desaturate it as well. Bring up a little bit more. I don't want it to like completely blow out. So something like that. So that's going to be my over. So wherever I paint the crack, it's going to be that. And then finally, I just need a paint node for a mask. And this is going to be black by default. That should all be good. Okay, that's going to go into my mask. So if we view this now, just realized. So I just paused the video there because I realized as I've been going, you know how earlier I said that color space is a bit of a nightmare in Mari, and how sometimes you just have to click boxes until it works. I just remembered that inside the merge node by default, there's this thing called use blending color space, which you need to have enabled when you're merging kind of color channels and disabled when you're merging linear things, or scalar data, I should say, sorry, not linear things. Scalar data like spec roughness and stuff like that. So it looks like that is by default now disabled if I do a new merge node. That is disabled. I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was enabled. So I've just gone in and I'm just changing all these, and you can see the difference that it makes. It's small, but it is important because it builds up. But if I change this on this one here, this was for the darker sort of things. It's just really changed the color there. So I've just enabled that, and it's brought in some of that orange, which I have inside that color node. Also, I've named this wrong. So yeah, just pause the recording to triple check that because I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, color space is a nightmare. Okay, cool. So carrying on with that, I've also just opened my window, so there's a bit more background noise, but I'm boiling. I shouldn't have down that tea in the same way I did. So this is darker spots. Cool. So what I've done is I've got this HSV now linked up. So anywhere that I paint here with white will be brighter. Presumably I'm not viewing the right node, so let's actually view that this time. Try that again. Make sure I've got my mesh selected. Am I viewing it? Why is it not working? View that. Yeah, it's black. Oh, it's because it's not painting into it for some reason. Why is it not painting into it? This is a great way if you've ever got an issue inside of Mari, just kind of visualize things by clicking on stuff and pressing 1 and viewing it, and then trying to work out what's going wrong. Oh, it's because... So in this instance, it's because I had black set as my color. So a very simple mistake. But sometimes it's not a super simple mistake and you can't quite work out why. So now if I go back and view the output of that, let's just check that this is working as intended. Yeah, so where I paint, it's brighter. Perfect. Okay, cool. Obviously, I don't want to use this brush. I want to actually project some details. I could obviously hand paint this, but there's nothing better than using actual texture ref to project with because it's just so much easier. And I'm also not a very good painter. So we just want to get some kind of cracks like this. Where it's sort of worn away. Super simple. So if I brought this in, obviously, as you can see, it's doing the exact opposite of what I want. So I could just paint this and then do the same and like invert it, the same that I was doing with my other mask before. But what I'm actually going to do with this one is I'm going to apply a filter to this image. So I'm going to go up here to filter and I'm going to go invert, and that will just give me a version inside of my image manager which is inverted, which is kind of what I want. So I'm going to do this to selected images, which is this one up here, apply that, and now you'll see I get this extra one here, which is perfect. So now I can just paint through exactly the way I want it, the cracks being white. Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm just going to go here, switching over to my Wacom. If you're ever unsure with what a tool's shortcuts are, they usually show down here. If they don't, you can just change that in the UI, or you can go on the documentation online for Mari. It's quite good. I helped write some of it. But it's very incredibly thorough. Like I just went on it now, or if not, Jens's stuff for the expansion pack goes through a lot of that stuff as well. It's really in detail, so that's great. Like, that's what I just used now to triple check that I was doing it right with the color space enabled option. Cool. So this is just gonna be really subtle, nothing too major. Just get a few cracks here and there. That's a little bit too major. Just viewing my ref. I do often paint with the mouse because a lot of texturing is just projecting stuff. It's not that much sort of hand painting unless you're sort of doing more digi-double organic stuff. I find that I am using the mouse a lot more these days. Let's just get a little bit here and there. Let's get one that's got a little bit of change of direction like that I did. Also where's the... So can't really see where the details on this are because it's so flat. So if I go to, let me see now, go to my ambient occlusion, kind of like I mentioned earlier, probably quite a useful one. But even that doesn't give me that much detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint this with the Principled BRDF because I just want to see where the cracks in my model are, which is where that's why I brought the normal in earlier, because it's just really useful to see that normal data on the mesh. Just get some of that on there. If I was doing this with a bit more time, I would go in, import a curvature from Substance. I was planning on doing that, but this is already running up quite a bit. So yeah, I'm just going to get some of these on. If you want to see how I would actually texture assets properly, then my Squirtle series is much longer and much more in depth, and that kind of goes through ref and sort of deconstructing that. This is more just about using Mari. And I just wanted to show sort of the process from start to finish of creating an asset, which is sort of what this is. Okay, great. So, I mean, it's not perfect. It's not going to win an Oscar for visual effects, but it's something. I just wanted to get that on there. It's a bit too bright at the moment. It really doesn't need to be quite that bright. So I'm just going to go back to this HSV. I'm going to bring this down slightly. I don't want it to be quite as intense. I'm just going to play with that ever so slightly. I'm just looking at the ref. I actually think these darker spots are too much going on there. So I'm just going to bring those down a little bit. Okay, cool. Okay. So let's have a look at this. How's this looking now? If I just look at my color, why are my masks viewing all of a sudden? They weren't showing before. So I'm going to just, this red I don't like because obviously I want to see the object as it was. So I'm just going to disable masking enabled, the masking visualization, which should be here. Mask preview gone. Okay, cool. I don't know. I must have pressed the keyboard shortcut for that. I mean, so it looks okay. Like, again, it's really nothing particularly special, but it looks all right. I'm actually going to pause this very quickly, and I am going to import, I'm going to bake a curvature of this mesh inside a Substance. So I'm going to import it. It shows me importing meshes again. It's also just a really, you will often do it on most assets. It's just a really useful way to kind of get a little bit more detail in there. So I'm going to do that, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, great. I'm back. I've got glasses on because I was starting to get eye strain, and I've had my lunch, so life is grand. I've exported just an AO and a curvature, so I'm just going to bring those into Substance. Again, I'm just going to bring them into this import section down here. This is how I like to kind of arrange things. It can get a little bit messy when you've got loads of lines leaning off, but it's just nice to be able to know where something is to quickly reference if you need to plug it in somewhere. Obviously, with the radio node from the expansion pack, then that fixes a lot of those issues. But I do not have access to that in this. Anyway, so I'm just going to go to my Substance exports. I'm going to import the AO, import all those patches, and this is just going to be called Substance AO, just so I know what it is. View it to make sure it's all looking okay. Looks good. And then I'm just going to do another paint node and call this Substance Substance curve. Just do capitals so it's a bit easier to see. Great. And then in this, just going to import my curvature. Great. And that looks good as well. Cool. Okay, so these are really useful maps, obviously, for a lot of different reasons. I really like the information I'm getting here on the crown, which I'm going to use in a bit. And let's just check the AO. I don't think I really need that one, to be honest. I don't think I'm going to end up using that, but I just thought, since I'm importing one, I might as well import both and just show the process. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to save that. And okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up a little bit of detail on this crown, and then we're going to call it good. So what do I want for that? I'm probably just going to go back to my texture library and find, if we go into metals, just so that it's not super plain. I really like this one. I use a lot. This is just from textures.com. See, there's quite a lot going on. It should tile, I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, I did these two. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go to my image manager, import these. This is the other one. It's very, very plain, but it's just a really nice base. So I don't just have a plain color. I have at least a little bit of something going on, that's the larger file. Let's delete that one because this is exactly the same, but high resolution. Great. Okay, cool. So I'm going to, this I can use tile textures because I've UV'd it properly. It was modeled in UV properly, whereas the face was just z-remeshed and then UV'd to the best ability because I didn't want to. Just using for this, so there's no point to actually like sit and do it for ages. So let's just try this one to begin with. Just see how this looks. And if I merge this over on top, let's just view this here with a little bit of AO on top as well. So I'm seeing that too. So I'm not saying, oh, it's because I've got it the wrong way around. So I'm going to press Shift X just to switch the base and the over. And now we'll see that properly appear. Okay, cool. And then let's just set this to 4 and 4. I actually can't see the UV scene. Where is it? I've gone past it. Anyway, it's because it's quite a subtle texture as well, to be fair. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try, let's try overlay first of all, which should be on contrast overlay. So I'm just going to overlay this texture on top of that. So adding quite a lot of orange to it, but I can fix that by doing an HSV. And we can just bring that ever so slightly back. Something like that. It is really saturated, so I'm just going to bring that and darken it as well. Cool. And then what else do I want to do? So in terms of color, metals usually are defined a lot more by their reflection, so I don't want too much in there, but I am just going to check to see what adding this second one on top does. As a tiled, let's just do that as... Let's do, oh, I really like that detail. That's really nice. Let's see, it's very pixelated though. But I kind of want to keep that detail quite large. And so this isn't tiling anywhere near as nice. You can kind of see around these edges. It's not looking great. So what I can actually do with this, okay, so there's the seam. Probably should have hidden that around the back, to be fair, not quite there. I'm also just going to bring this round a little bit. Oh, it's a seam in the image. It's not a seam in the... Okay, it's because the image doesn't tile. But I do quite like those details. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try... Let's get our curvature. And I'm just going to put this in the mask for now and see what happens. And then I'm going to add... So, is it... how do you do it again? So if you hold Control, you can just press a dot just so that I can kind of move this around a little bit more flexibly. It's just a little bit easier. And I'm just going to try levels here. I'm just going to drop that in and see what I can do with that. Should also set this to overlay. Why do I want this? I want this mostly on... Okay, so a way to invert as well with the levels node is you can just flip these two. So I want this mostly not on the edges. Let's see what happens if I... Why is this? Now that I flipped it, it's behaving really weird. Let's reset this. So flip that to 0, flip that to 1. It's behaving very strange. Okay, it's a bit better, but what's going on there? Let me just view that. Oh, I guess because it's so flat, there's no real information there in the curvature, is there? A blur would work quite nicely. Let's just check. Did I import that as 16-bit? I did. Okay. That's not the reason. Anyway. So what I'm going to do, let's just view that again. And set this to overlay. Like that. See how that looks. It's a little bit harsh. Play with this mask a little bit. Yeah, I really do want to flip that, don't I? What if I'm just going to invert this beforehand? Save doing it in the levels just so it's a little bit cleaner. And so it's going really weird here because it's not being clamped. I believe that should be why. So if I just clamp output levels, it shouldn't brighten. If you ever get a weirdness from a levels node, it's a clamping issue like that. If it's getting brighter than it should be. Just going to view this levels. So I kind of want it in... Yeah, it's because it's such a flat colour in this section here. So I can't really just... I wanted to just kind of take that out. But then it gives me that there. Is the... Oh, brightness lookup might work. I couldn't remember if this was extension pack or not. Let's view this. Does this let me take out... how does this work? How does this work? Okay, cool. I'm back. I realized what I was doing wrong. So I do want to use this brightness lookup node to basically just extract the grays. So I'm going to use a brightness lookup, and basically if I hook that in here and hook that in here, I'm going to remove that. Double click this. So basically this is how a line usually looks. 0 equals 0, 1 equals 1. But I want the grays to equal 1, and I want everything else to be black, basically. So if I view that now, then if I clamp that enough, the problem is because there's not that much data in this mask. So I kind of want it to not be on the edges and not be in the crevices, is what I'm thinking with this. And we're going to see how that looks. Obviously it's not going to look great, but it's something. And then I'm also going to blur this mask. So I'm going to do the same way that I did it before, just checking that I'm recording. I am. Cool. I'm going to bake this to paint node, and then I'm just going to use that that baked version to blur. So if I go filter, blur Gaussian, make sure that I'm going back to current paint target. That should be enough. Great. And that is quite contrasted. So I could also try, instead of overlay, there's also obviously multiply and add. So if I just go light and add, what happens there? No. Okay, overlay is quite good. And if that was, if this original image was adding too much darkness, because overlay adds darks and adds lights, then I could just kind of get rid of some of the black values in there by bringing that down a little bit, just that I get the texture detail in there still, or I could bring it up really far if I wanted to, which I'm going to do. I don't want it to be quite that burnt in, so I'm just going to bring that up ever so slightly, something like that. Maybe a little bit more. So if I press D on that node, I can disable that and we can see how that looks. So yeah, that's quite nice. So I do have a seam there, which I'm seeing, I think, in the grand scheme of things. I could obviously just go in and paint that out. Actually, you know what I'm going to, just to show, because I haven't really done that much painting a lot, this has been procedural, and I want to kind of show the entire thing. So I'm going to just do a paint node on top of this. We're going to set this to transparent. This is not going to be scalar data. I'm just going to merge this onto here. Actually, wait, no, was that just mask data? It was color space. So we want to make this, okay, that should be fine. And I'm just going to use the texture which I was using, which is this one. I'm just going to paint that out. In theory, should work here, and it's going to merge over. There we go, great. Although actually I do quite like these crispy details here, so I'm just going to use that bit instead. Great. And so this is just a really easy way to clean up seams. Just merge it on top of the tiled. Any more? Take a slightly different bit, so it's a bit more variety. Great. So there's a little bit of an issue here. And that is happening. Is that because of the, you know what, that's all right. For what this is fine. Okay, cool. So now if we go back and view this with the shader, because it's metallic, it's quite important to see it with the shader, just because that sort of shows you how everything's looking. So now we've actually got a little bit more kind of like crispiness to this. Before, if we just disable this, just show that base color, I can just disable these ones. Really was quite plain and bland. So yeah, just a little bit something in there. Again, not a particularly complex asset, so we're gonna not do a huge amount more there. I just want to add some spec roughness to this, and maybe get a little bit of height data for where these scratches are. We're just going to use those to inform that, and then we're going to call it a day because we're running up to an hour. I didn't really want to go over And then I'll render it off screen and show you kind of the result. And yeah, make any disclaimers that I kind of have to. Great, okay, so let's set the spec roughness now. Now that we've kind of got all that blocked in, I'm just going to, so the way I work is just going to move everything down so that it's a bit more split up, the different channels. So I kind of work base and then kind of set up all the channels sort of running parallel to each other. So this is the metallic, which is working quite nicely. If I wanted to, I could backdrop all this, but I could backdrop per channel. But I just personally, I don't. I'm going to just bring this up a little bit. Cool. So one of the quickest ways to get a really quick spec roughness is just desaturate everything and invert it. Usually works quite nicely. And so what we'll do is I'll do an HSV just to show you what that looks like. And we can see it might work for this, it might not, just as a good base. And then on top of that, we can add things. But if not, then we will have to just make it all by hand, which is fine. So I'm just going to move everything along a little bit here. So this is my base color. I'm going to desaturate that and then I'm going to invert, just see how that looks. I've got a feeling this stone is going to be way too... Oh, okay. That's not awful. The reason I'm using that is because then obviously a lot of the reason I'm suggesting that is because a lot of the diffuse details, the color details, line up with the spec roughness. And it's just a really like rough way to begin. The color space was wrong because it wasn't plugged into the correct channel. So now, okay, I was expecting it to be a bit darker. Let's just have a look at how that looks through the shader. So yeah, way too rough. But now you can see here, we've got these really nice kind of like patches for the different bits just showing up in the spec roughness. Which I actually quite like in that instance because those bits would be rougher. But the base is not correct in general. So what I can do is I can use levels to kind of fix that in certain areas, and the crown as well. Again, these details are quite nice because I would expect this kind of like crap or whatever it is, like this build up to be less rough. But the base of it is not correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop down to levels and a merge node, and you'll see why in a second. So this is my base here. I can actually just get rid of these now here. That was the kind of stand-ins I was using just to visualize it. So I'm going to add this into the levels node, this into this, and this can be, I can use my crown masks. So this is going to add this different version here, this different levels version where just the crown is. So I can play with that to kind of get my value. And I actually really like viewing this just because I know what the values should look like visually because I've been doing this for long enough. So that needs to be darker. And I can also just crunch it a little bit. If it's too bright in general, I can bring down the whites. So something like that. How's that looking visually? So it's probably, okay, so it's too specky, so there's too much contrast, so that might be a case of just bringing that up a little bit so it's not pinging quite as much. And I'm just intrigued. Anyway, this is just a base, so I'm just going to use this. Kind of want it to be a bit more like that in general, but I can also always use those masks on top to add further detail later. Let's go with that. Okay, cool. Actually, I want it to be slightly darker because I'm going to add more grunge on top. Okay, cool. Great. And then the head is way too much. So what I'll do is I'll just use this mask, but I'll invert it. So I'll add another levels node. And this time I'm going to levels this, and I'm going to merge this back on top with the over. But I'm going to take this crown mask and invert it because everything else is not the crown. Plug that into the mask. And now, yeah, cool. So now I'm playing with this. So first of all, I'm just going to try and move in the midpoint because I feel like, although I like the details, just overall it's too shiny. Again, I'm just going to view this through here just so I can see what the value looks like. Sorry, no, I meant view it through the channel. Cool. Yes, that looks about right. Like obviously it's not going to be super bright because there still needs to be some spec. Although that is looking, I've lost it a little bit. I still want a little bit in there. This is where Murray's visualization does come in hand. And what I'm actually going to do, just a fun little thing. Oh no, I'm not going to. Just wondering about darkening some of these areas. I could use the AO or the curvature just to. Oh no, you know what? I'm not going to darken them. I suppose it's a difficult thing because I'm wondering. Basically, I'm just going to talk through what I'm thinking in my head. You can see it's slightly lighter here, on sort of like on the chip sections. But part of me wonders if that's actually not a color thing, but it's more the subsurface because it's all these little like triangular chips that the light is coming through and making it brighter in those sections specifically. So while I could add that into the color, I might find that when I've got subsurface on that, it actually doubles the effect. So for now, I'm going to keep it sort of one note. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the ref to think. Although I do quite like, I'm just going to add, I do quite like there's some kind of different patternation there. So just a final thing I'm going to do just to help break this up a little bit. Sorry, I've jumped back from spec roughness to color, but often is the way. I'm just going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to use, have I used this one already? I don't know. I'm just going to use this texture for now. I'm going to put that into the over. I'm just going to check this curvature mask, see if I can extract the mask that I want, which is basically like this sort of area, which I don't think I'm going to be able to. If I just check the AO, I'm assuming not either. Yeah, not really. Okay, so I'm going to hand paint this. So I'm just going to add a black mask, going to make sure that it's not transparent. And I'm going to view this through my AO so that I can actually see where I'm painting. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to just view it through the shader. It's the easiest way because then I've got the normal on top of that. The AO isn't going to bake that in just to make sure I'm painting in the right area. So I'm just going to go in here, make sure I'm on white. Yep. Is that actually doing anything? No, it's not because I don't have the mesh selected. There we go. Cool. All right. Great. And let's remove that. Go back to this and then paint again. It's fine if that image underneath isn't working because I can always fix that afterwards if the tiled node isn't working. I'm just going to change my shelf thing. I want this to be slightly harder brush. Okay, great. Let's just do that. Super rough, I know, but I didn't want this video to be much longer than it is currently getting to. I've still got export. Is it B? What's the R? R does radius. Okay, cool. That'll do. All right, great. So I don't know why this is so mucked up. Let's have a look. Oh, it's because I changed it to 11 repeat in one and didn't change it to the other. So let's check that out. Okay, great. Obviously, there's some lines here, but in theory, if we look at this through the shader, through the mask, then because, I mean, there is a line there now because I've messed that up, but what I can do is I can just offset that slightly in the V, and that should fix that. Just make sure it's not there. Doesn't seem to be one there. There's sort of one there, but you're not really going to see that. But anyway, so it is what it is. And also, I just want to view this now. Because it's a little bit obvious at the moment. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to multiply the curvature over, or I'm going to try that, just that it's not a super consistent mask. Because what I really like about this curvature is so I can pick up just the edges by leveling that out, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So I'm going to merge this on top, but I'm going to add a levels, first of all, to it. So let's work with the levels first. I'm just going to try and pick out those whites for now. So really get those in there. Great. Just going to clamp the output levels again. And then I'm going to view this. And now, obviously, because it's just a normal blend mode, it's going to be normal. So I'm just going to darken and multiply that on top. And now it should multiply that on top of what I had. Great. So now I've got these areas. If we view that again on top, then that's giving me some breakup for free. Lovely. It's a little bit hard edged, so what I can do is just mess with that levels nodes a little bit. Great. Okay, cool. Awesome. It's a little bit curvatory looking, but for an hour, it's fine. I could go in and merge over a Perlin or something. I don't know. I could do something else, but I'm not going to for now. If we just view this. Great. I really got off track there, didn't I? I said I was going to do the spec roughness, right? I think I was saying about the spec roughness. So actually, to be fair, for the spec for the face I'm liking is just this crown. I just want to add a little bit of breakup. So what I'm going to do is go back to my texture library. It's got to be the substance procedurals because it always is. And let's just take a couple of these. Their wipes and their fingerprints are bloody gorgeous. So let's just have a look at this one. Okay, I like that one and I like that one. Okay, I've already picked that one, and I think that one and that one. I'm just going to see how these all look. Bringing them in. Just setting them to raw data because they're going to be used for masks. Actually, probably won't need that wipe one. It was a bit much. So this is going into the spec roughness. So I'm just going to... See, this is the one problem with Mari. It gets a little bit cumbersome, but you can see everything. Whereas in Substance, it's all a bit... And I know I'm comparing the two a lot, but they're the only texturing programs out there. And chances are most people are learning Substance first these days. So it is what it is. And then, so I'm just going to... This one I quite liked. So I'm just going to add this on top using a blend mode of add. And that will just add the... Well, I mean, you'll see the effect in a second. And so because I'm setting up a spec roughness, because obviously this has now added it to everywhere. So what I could actually do is in the same way I've got my marble and my gold crown, I could merge these together. But for now, I'm just going to be a little bit lazy and I'm just going to use this crown mask. Cool. So now what that's done is it's added it everywhere here. So let's just view this tiling. Let's just see what it's looking like. Yeah, so it needs to repeat a lot more. Something like that. And I also want to... actually, that's a bit too fine, you know. Maybe I'm not liking this quite as much as I thought I was. Let's pop in... That's a bit nicer. What's this one look like? I'm not going to go with that first one. Right, let's levels that out. I want to make sure that it's not everywhere. But I can also fix that afterwards if it is a little bit everywhere. Okay, great. So this is what a lot of people inside of Substance or just in general will just be like, right, cool, that's done. I've added breakup, but it really can just look like a tiling texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break up this mask a little bit more. Also, that's quite extreme, that breakup there. So I'm going to, inside this mask that I'm setting up, I'm just going to merge something else over. What else have I got here? I might use a procedural because I haven't used any of those. What about just a Perlin? See how that looks. And just multiply that over, and that will just break it up in like half the area. Multiply... Oh no, crap, sorry. No, this isn't in the mask. What I've done is I've said one thing and I've done another. So merge this onto my crown mask. So this is going over, so I need to switch those, Shift X, pop that into the mask now. And now we're going to start building a bit more of an advanced mask. So I'm going to darken, multiply this. And now you'll see this kind of like, if we view this mask, we should, oh, it's because my scale isn't right. Wait, is the cloud, I much prefer the clouds because it's kind of like the Perlin, but you get a bit more control with the roughness. So we're going to use this instead. So you can get something a bit sharper, although I'm actually going to dial that back a little bit. But this is I think this is probably my favorite procedural inside of here. Cool, so now we'll see, yeah, cool. So it's not just going to apply this tile texture everywhere, it's going to be in some places, and then I can just further edit that by playing with the levels again. So if I crush that down a little bit more, you will see that I'm getting this nice sort of like rougher section in some places. Obviously that's looking a little bit procedural. But what I'm then going to do is I'm also going to, before that, I'm going to further add the curvature, because around the edges of something where it kind of gets bashed and buffed a little bit, it's going to be a little bit rough. So I'm going to merge that on top, which is the reason I brought it in the first place. So let's just see how that looks. So I'm going to, again, multiply this. I'm going to turn off the Perlin noise for now. Let's view this mask. Okay, great. So again, I'm going to levels this because kind of just want to get these white bits around the edge. A little bit, just going to avoid those crevices if I can. You can tell it's been long since I've used this because I'm struggling to use my favorite nodes, and I'm just going to clamp the output again. Great, so now how does that look? I should be setting these on different keyboard shortcuts so I don't have to keep jumping around to a few different things, but it is what it is. Okay, so now that's applying that. Hopefully just on the edges, but still a bit much, isn't it? Okay, so that's a bit better. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, cool. And then I'm gonna add that Perlin back on. Sorry, clouds, which is gonna break it up further. It's probably a bit too much, so I'm just gonna change this levels again. Great, something like that. And then last but not least, I'm going to add some scratches because they're just a really nice way to get a bit of detail. Do I have a scratches? Do I have one under grunge, or is it dirt and grunge? I'll be very shocked if I don't have scratches mask. What's that? Ah. Oh, there we go. Cool, sick. Okay, so I'm going to use this. And I'm just going to add a very fine sort of scratch layer on top. So I'm going to bring this in. You may have noticed, you may not have noticed, but this has got a bit of blue in it. So I'm actually just going to HSV that out. Hue saturation value node. What time are we on? Oh, we've run over a little bit. But also, it's not the quickest program to use, and texturing also isn't super quick, so there is a slight difference between real world texturing time and YouTube ideal content time. But I wanted this to be a start to finish. All the other videos have been quite compact, and this one I specifically didn't want to be. So if you start with me, nice. Proud of you. So we're going to just set this to 3 and 3. Probably a bit much. I'm just going to levels that. I'm just wondering. Again, color space. Who really gets it? Yeah. Just gonna. I still remember being at NPC and being surrounded by like some of the most talented texture artists I know, and every single person had a different idea on how to use color space. And just, so you can see that. So changing this down a lot is changing my entire model, and that's because this clamp. Sorry, not my entire model, but it. I bet that's because of the clamp. Yeah. Okay. So it shouldn't be doing that. It shouldn't be making it darker. It should have just been affecting that one. The image that I'm putting on top here. But it was not. So yeah, always clamp out your output levels. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to make sure that's, first of all, using my crown mask. And then on top of that, I'm just going to break that up a little bit further. So just adding a little dot there so I can merge thing on top. And yeah, it's getting a little bit messy, but this is why naming is important. So I like these scratches, but I don't necessarily want them to be everywhere. So I'm just gonna, for this, I'm just gonna add the grunge wipes and see what that does. And obviously multiplying that on top. Well, not obviously, but I am obvious. Oh, I thought it crashed. Yeah, being at NPC and being surrounded by like some of the most talented texture artists, like Meshban was there, he was the head of texturing at the time. It's just some really cool guys around me, and like asking people about color space, and everybody had a different, like color space specifically at Mari, and everybody had a different opinion on it. Like they're like, no, you have to do it like this, and same with like the computer settings inside of Mari. So that's why I have a lot of gripes with the software, because I just don't think it's easy enough, and that's why I make content like this, because the onboarding isn't good enough. Unfortunately, if like some of the most talented, not including myself, but those people that I was surrounded by, the most talented people in the industry, can't discern the different things, then what hope do people at uni or whatever trying to learn it? I don't know, it just irks me. It irks me quite a lot. And so that is why I'm a little bit outspoken about this piece of software, because I really do like it. So this is now my mask. That's probably a bit too, I'm just going to go to a clouds. So what is that actually doing? So I can just disable that node to see what it's actually doing. Not very much. Yeah, so I don't like that. Tiling texture is not great. Let's do just another clouds for now. Oh no, let's use another procedural. Forgotten what other ones there are. So you can just go here, nodes, procedurals. Oh, there's a marble procedural. I wonder what that's like. I think I'm just going to go Perlin, you know? Let's just go Perlin. It's fine. Just to isolate this a bit more. Oh, it's because I hadn't changed the scale. So let's visualize this a little bit better, shall we? Reset this. Why is that Perlin not doing anything? Oh, because I was changing the size the wrong way. Okay, cool. So I kind of want that so that scratches like every, basically just not everywhere, and you can sort of see that happening there if I really crank the mask. Yeah, cool. So you can see I've got areas of scratches, areas of non-scratches. So now if I change this size, that will affect that more. What time is it? Okay, so final thing, I'm just going to actually multiply two of these Perlins together, and you'll see why in a second. So if I merge a big one and a small one, then this way I get high and low frequency noise. So if I go darken, multiply, make this one much smaller, you'll see that I get, we need to view this though, don't we, ideally. So we've got a big one, which is going to be like 0.2. So if I disable that, you'll see that. And then inside of that, I'm getting more breakup by making this smaller. Great, and then I'm going to reset this levels node and just visualize this, just to bring, because multiplying two nodes together you'll lose a lot of the pure white in the mask, so I'm just going to crank this up like this. And I don't mind that it's going to black, because there's some areas that I don't want there to be any scratches. The one thing about this, though, is this original scratch texture, its mid-value is just a little bit, you can see that it's kind of a little bit too high. So I'm just going to bring that down and then bring back some of these scratches. Let me just see if I can get that without losing it. That's kind of working. Yeah, okay. Something like that. Great. Again, it's not perfect. I'm not really working off ref of this, which you should be, but this is just to show how to get an asset done. Great. Cool. Oh, what's gone on there? So what I've done is I've just painted into that will be the crown mask, presumably. I've accidentally painted into that. So this is what happens when you share one mask with everything. So I'm just going to fill that with black. That will fill my selection and it will fix that issue right away. Cool. Okay. So final thing I want to do is into my height, or my bump, or my disp, whatever it's called. I just want to add those scratch details in there just so that they're also displaced down. And the same with the kind of veins that I put on the kind of scratches on the head. Which is great because I've got those masks somewhere. I just need to remember where. This is why you kind of want to keep your naming conventions really clean. Like if you've made a mask, call it something. So let's find which one that is. This is bad. I should not have named this as badly as I have. So here I can find straight away this is darker dots. But it wasn't that one, was it? This is on... It was this. If I have a look at this one. Okay, so I'm going to name this paint node properly now. So this is the crack mask, and then the same with the scratches, which was this mask here. But in fact, it's not actually the mask on that one, it's the value. So we'll sort that out afterwards. Let's just do the scratches to begin with. So crack mask, I'm just gonna put a levels or something here just so that it's plugged into something, just so I can drag it down without moving the mask. Great. So my disp is down here, and I'm going to just merge this on top. Delete this levels node. No, I'll keep the levels node there. I'm just going to add that into the mask. Let's view our shader just so we can see what's going on. Just unselect that. Okay, great. And then just I'm just going to use a color for this one. No, actually, no, sorry. I'm going to do an HSV so I can just darken it, which displaces in. So darken what's already in there, which is my displacement map. So anything in that white mask will be affected. And by affected, that is valuing down. So great, that's done exactly what I wanted it to. You can kind of see that. I want it to go in, obviously, because they're cracks, not pushing out. So let me just see what that actually looks like in the mask, because I don't want it to be too heavy. This is the one problem about the visualization. Substances, height data visualizes a lot nicer. This just doesn't really. If I was working in a proper production environment, we would actually export the ZBrush displacement separately to the Mari or height displacement, because you would usually have a lot more than just cracks. You would probably have a little bit of like granite-y sort of texture and stuff like that. I'm just very aware of time. So, and you would combine those in LookDev because it just makes it a little bit easier. You can combine your ZDisp and you can combine your Mari or Substance Disp. And that way you've also got a lot more that you can play with. You can kind of LookDev those on the fly. But yeah, for this, I'm going to just bake it in. So I'm just going to try and take roughly the same values of some of the other areas for this. It's really not the best way to do it, but we're going to do that. And then also the scratches on the crown I'm going to get in. So if we find that, this was slightly different because I'm actually not using... I can't just take this mask, because if we have a look at this mask, it doesn't incorporate the scratches. So I'm just going to think about how to do this very quickly. So if I do a merge of this, I want those to be... Let me just have a think about this. So if I merge that HSV with this, what does that look like? If I multiply, darken, multiply, that should give me it, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So that is my mask. Great. And then again, I'm just going to merge that on top just to use that data to HSV again. Use this as the mask now. To indent where those scratches are, I want my crown to have to have displaced scratches, which it doesn't because I haven't changed its levels yet, and now it does. Okay, sick. So I'm actually going to keep those quite subtle, so I'm just going to do something like that. And let's just see this in the shader. I don't actually know how Mari handles displacement these days, so I'm just going to view that. So at the moment I've got this pumped into bump, but if I do this into disp, it might give me slightly more accurate. It's actually done nothing. What if I change this one? There's a setting somewhere you have to enable to turn that on, because basically it knows that it will kill your computer if you're not careful. Yeah, it's turned off. Is it in the shader tab? I'm just going to save this. I think it is here, isn't it? Yeah, now it's going to tell me, watch out. Don't do it. Don't do it. Et voila, it's beautiful. So those scratches are obviously a lot. I only want it to be really, really slight. I'm just wondering how it... Are there options for that? Bump weight, displacement bias, displacement scale. Oh, it's the max tessellation. There we go. Okay, cool. That's why it looks so crap. So let's just... no, which one was it? It was this one, wasn't it? Just play with that a little bit, just to bring it in. I really don't want it to be too much, but I just want it to break up the light ever so slightly. And again, these are probably a bit much. Let's just do it ever so slight. Okay, great, cool. So wham bam. Thank you, ma'am. It's sort of done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to export these now, and this video's gone on for so much longer than I wanted it to. I'm going to export this. So the way to do that, as we've already discussed in previous videos, I'm just going to click on one of the channels and just go to File, Export Manager. Don't know why it's exporting these as PNG, but first of all, I want to select where I'm going to do this. So let's just do this to let's just make a folder, go in there, cull spec. So I would usually do these as I usually do EXR. Let's just do EXR. I mean and I'm going to do this as sRGB, 8-bit. Oh, is my cull 16-bit? Maybe my cull was 16-bit by default and I didn't correct that. Oh, and I'm just going to do this as a TIFF. It did not like this before. I don't know why. TIFF should be fine. PNG? I don't know if that's lossless or not. I was using PNGs at my last company, actually, to be fair, and it was all fine, but it wasn't super like film VFX. But that should be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export those and see what happens. Export all. I should have done export current, but potato. And let's just have a look. Check if they're coming out. This might take a second. Yeah, it looks like it's working. I mean, it's only 2 UDIMs. So, I guess that is that for that. I'm going to set this up in LookDev and just set up a really quick render of it in an OK HDRI just to show that these textures do work. I'm not going to do anything fancy in LookDev whatsoever. I'll just plug and play and see that it's working. And that's probably the end of this video because it's already gone on for way too long. Yeah, let's head over there. Cool, I'm going to pause this. Cool, so what I've done is I have imported these textures inside of Arnold Now, and I've just put them inside the shader. I also added a small amount of subsurface scattering. This is a really low resolution render. Let me just up that a little bit. I'm using GPU, so let me just try 20 and see if that... the only thing I will mention that I've done is the base color wasn't looking particularly contrasted. It was all kind of getting washed out. I think that's partly because of the subsurface scattering. So what I've done is I actually added just for demonstration's sake, I've added a contrast node inside of the base color before it goes into that, and I'm going to show you that in just a second when it's finished rendering. Cool, so I've just unpaused that. Yeah, so what I did is my base color here, I've just color corrected that ever so slightly. I've just upped the contrast to 1.7 and decreased the saturation, because when I upped the contrast, it made it quite saturated. So I would do that in Mari usually, but just for the sake of demonstration quickly, I've done that here, just because it wasn't showing through enough with that substance, and now I'm actually seeing those darker details there, for example. Yeah, you can kind of see those scratches are coming through quite nicely, especially with the SSS, it doesn't look too sharp, which is quite nice. Yeah, this crown, I mean, it looks fine. Metals are quite a difficult one, so I'd want to spend a little bit longer on that. I think fine is very much the word. It wouldn't be good enough for like a film or anything like that, or even a portfolio piece. But I mean, we spent an hour and a half, whatever it was, texturing the entire thing from start to finish, getting it into a renderer. So it's a great first pass to kind of keep on working from there. I quite like these little white dots really do come through. I'm going to do a full quality render. This was just, I mean, this took a minute and a half. The render stats aren't super high on this, so I'll do a full quality render and post that now to show what this looks like a little bit nicer. But yeah, for the purpose of this demonstration, I think it works quite nice. Yeah, we did it. We textured an asset from start to finish, and that also concludes the Mari for Beginners course that I've made, started probably about a year ago now, I guess. So it's all done. This was the asset from start to finish, the final part that I said I was going to make. I hope it was useful. If you've got any questions, obviously leave them below, or head over to the Discord. All the links and stuff are in the video description for all of that stuff. And as I mentioned, if you want to follow along, this model will be up on my Gumroad for a small price, but that obviously helps support me for making this series, which I hope has been quite useful to people. And it will come with like the Substance Bakes and the ZBrush exports as well, and also the ZBrush file. So yeah, I hope this has been useful. And if you're working on your own stuff, obviously head over to the Discord. And as always, I give feedback on there. And up next, I guess, is going to be the same series, but about Substance, having learned a lot about it the last year and really warming up to it a lot more. Yeah, cool. I don't think there's anything else to add. That is that, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. If I think of anything, I'll put it in the video description. Take it easy, and I'll see you later.